Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, the Pennsylvania Auditor General, Eugene DePasquale, has issued a report with stunning criticism of the Pennsylvania Department of Education and the Board of Education, the State Board of Education. But first, Dr. Stuart Shapiro talks about the quality of long-term care.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, welcome back to the program. Well, we're going to get in with the elected Auditor General of the state of Pennsylvania, Eugene DePasquale. His reports that he's issued, these audits that he's issued, you got to stay for this. This is incredible what the Auditor General has said, and the language that the normally placid Auditor General, he's fired up, he's not happy. We're going to have him on. But first, Dr. Stuart Shapiro, are you unhappy or are you happy this morning?
I'm always happy.
I know,
Terry.
You're always smiling. Look, in the past, you and I have chatted about having you come in and talk about this whole business of preparing for long-term care. You want to go into a facility, the quality of these facilities. You're the expert on this. You're the CEO of the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association. You spent a lot of your life, representing the various facilities, studying them, looking into them. Give the folks a couple of hints.
Sure. Let me talk about quality of care and the long-term care facilities around the state. And as you know, I'm always the umpire. I call it as I see it.
Right.
Today, I looked at some data between 2014 and 2015 on Pennsylvania nursing homes. And they've improved on 10 out of 11 measures as put out there by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, the federal government. Improved on 10 out of 11. In fact, Pennsylvania is now, its nursing homes are at 8 on those quality measures. They beat the national average on 8 of 11 of them, which I think is pretty darn good. Improvement on 10 out of 11, beating the national average. Then you look at deficiencies, serious deficiencies in nursing home. Pennsylvania ranked 50th in the lowest in the country in serious deficiencies. That means they beat 49 out of 50 other states. The Auditor General, interestingly, who's going to be on your show right after me, is now looking at ways that the state can improve its inspection process.
Right.
But a recent report said we're among the state have the lowest deficiencies. You've seen penalties against nursing homes go way down, bans on admissions because quality wasn't so good, way down, virtually zero. So the system is improving. Secretary Murphy, who runs the Department of Health, is very tough on what she does. And we support that toughness because as somebody who advocates to make sure that quality is maintained in the nursing homes, we want to make sure that this continues and that there's always continual improvement.
Well, one of the questions we have is, in this preparation, almost every day someone will come up to me, maybe it's because of my age, and they'll say, my mother or my grandmother or somebody, we're looking at nursing homes, we're trying to figure out what to do. This is not easy.
This is not easy. And what people need to do is they ought to stay home as long as they can. But when they need care, they need to have care in a quality facility. They can look at the CMS review.
What's that? Help us out, CMS.
The federal government,
Okay.
Center for Medicare and Medicaid.
Okay.
They can go to PA for Quality Care, which is a website that talks about quality care and will help them find a facility. But there is nothing better than if you need to be in a nursing home. And right now, 81,000 Pennsylvanians are in a nursing home on any given day.
Repeat that again.
81,000 people are in Pennsylvania nursing homes. You got to go visit it. You got to go visit it once and twice. You should talk to the people who run it. You should talk to the nurses. You should talk to the
people who are there.
You talk to the people who are there. You look at the rating systems.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Pennsylvania nursing homes are really today better than they have ever been before.
Yeah, I do about 3 or 4 talks a year in nursing homes. They have these active programs to bring speakers in. Why they have me, I don't know, to talk about politics, but that's another matter. And I am stunned at the number of people, even friends of mine, who've gone in and I thought, this isn't going to work for these people. This isn't going to work. And then when I talk to them, they say they love it. Somehow there's something that happens in these places.
It's called socialization.
Is that what it is?
People living at home often feel terribly isolated.
Yeah.
But they come into a nursing home, there's high quality care, the quality of life is good, and in fact, there's been studies that show that people often thrive when they go into a nursing home.
Yeah.
Also, people are going to the nursing homes to rehab after they have a hip replaced, or they have a knee replacement, or they've had surgery to get their strength back. So there's really a lot of people live there for significant periods of their life, and a lot of people just come in, rehab, and leave.
Yep. All right, I'm chatting with Dr. Stuart Shapiro. We'll be back in a moment. We're going to talk about tort reform and what's going on with the impact from out-of-state law firms who are suing our Pennsylvania nursing homes. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
All right, I'm chatting with Dr. Stuart Shapiro, and we're talking about a whole bunch of things relative to nursing homes. Let's talk a little bit about tort reform and whether the situation's improving. Express your concerns. You've expressed them before. Where does it all stand?
Well, Pennsylvania has some of the best hospitals, doctors, and nursing homes in the country. And as we talked about a minute ago, Pennsylvania nursing homes rank way above the national average in quality. It's interesting, though. While Pennsylvania ranks sixth in population in the country, they rank second, sometimes first, in being plaintiff lawyer friendly, and they rank second in the amount of dollars that are spent to out-of-state lawyers to settle lawsuits in long-term care. Now, I'd much rather see that money going to patient care. And last year, $90 million of the state's Medicaid budget went to settle lawsuits, most of them frivolous, and to pay trial lawyers. Most of those trial lawyers that got these continual settlements came from out of state. So we have a situation in Pennsylvania that is a serious problem, is spending money that ought to go to patient care is going to lawyers, and it needs to be resolved. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that resolution. You know that I'm sure we talk about it on this show, you talk about it with many of your other guests. There's a big divide between Republicans and Democrats in Pennsylvania. Senate passed, though, in May, a bill 40-9, bipartisan support to put caps on punitive damages in Pennsylvania, which will have the net effect of driving lawyers back to where they came from, because it's not the Pennsylvania lawyers that are the problem, it's these out of state, and it will stabilize dollars that are being wasted and spent it on care. And when doctors had this same legislation passed in 2002, it stabilized the doctor flight. It made sure that doctors stayed here, they practiced here, their care went up because they weren't always looking over their shoulder.
They could apologize if mistakes get made. They could apologize without fear of being sued just if they go and say, I'm sorry something happened, right?
Right. And all we want is very simple legislation that's consumer friendly, that will keep dollars focused on care in a very bipartisan way.
One other question before I let you go. Bill passed the Senate, it's in the House.
It's in the House.
And any word on
we hope it'll be passed sometime this fall, and we hope that the governor will
if they get a budget first, right?
Well, a budget that makes seniors a priority.
I understand.
I mean, you know me, I care about the seniors.
I understand.
And we got to pass a budget soon that does that.
All right. Well, thanks for coming in. All right. Eugene DePasquale, the Auditor General of the state, has issued stinging criticism of the Department of Education and the State Board of Education. He joins me following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association, Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania, and by the Pennsylvania Coal Alliance, representing companies involved in America's most affordable, reliable energy source. To learn more, visit pacoalalliance.com.
Well, I've interviewed the gentleman sitting across from me, the State Auditor General Eugene DePasquale, on many occasions. General, I've never seen you. You are really upset about this, and it's okay. I mean, it's okay to be upset.
To me, it's pretty simple. When the State Department of Education comes up with a criteria of what is a succeeding school and what isn't, and they find out that there's about 561 schools that don't meet their criteria, then they decide to just do nothing about it. It's outrageous.
Yeah, I mean, and is this an issue that they should have? The Department of Ed should have put out a report and said we need to help, or I mean, what do you think what would you say to them about getting it done?
Generally speaking, you come up, you set up the standard. You should also go look, there's going to be schools that make the number and schools that don't, and you should have plans for each. And then beyond that, you should have once you have that list of the schools, you should be in constant dialogue with them as what can we do to help, and you should also be up front with the General Assembly and the governor and say, we've got this information of, a pretty big chunk of schools in our state that didn't meet what our definition of success is, and here's what we plan to do to turn around, and ask the General Assembly and the governor for help in getting that plan done.
So in other words, some of these schools are in a serious situation with students that aren't performing the way they should. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, correct.
Number two, they didn't go forward and notify people that this was the problem and say, we need some help, we need to develop a plan.
Some parents didn't even know. In fact, I don't know what the percentage is, but we know since our report has come out, parents have contacted our office and said they didn't even know their school was on the list.
I mean, that is in some ways amazing. Now, when you do these, I mean, you've said misguided leadership and dereliction of duties. That's because I was being nice that day. Oh, I know. I mean, well, look, we can talk about a lot of things that are important, but the education of our kids
is job number one.
I don't think anyone, conservative, a liberal, Democrat, Republican, nobody can disagree. But now here's what, I mean, you also said that you didn't even think the Corbett administration, the governor and the top staffers were even aware of this. Is that I mean, I find that hard to believe.
Let's put it this. All I can tell you is we saw no evidence that the governor's office was even aware of this situation.
Oh my gosh.
Now, maybe there was, I can only tell you by what we have, we're not the NSA,
sure.
et cetera. But, I mean, we were doing an audit, but there was no evidence that this information was ever communicated in any serious way to the governor and his top team.
Yeah. All right, and then you found, there's this reoccurring situation about at least one former secretary in the Department of Education who had he's a consultant.
He basically had a $140,000 a year job, right?
Consultant, and you don't know what he did.
He was called a special advisor to the governor, and we know that he is basically passed for the parking garage. He punched in about 72% of the time when he punched in, there was no evidence of even turning on the computer, logging into email, doing anything.
Right.
72% of the time. And I just find that stunning. In today's day and age, electronically, you can track anytime someone uses their phone.
Ask Hillary Clinton, right?
Yeah, those electronic records, they don't go away.
You can't even delete them and they get them back.
Correct. Yeah, even if you delete them, you get them back.
You're right.
72% of the time that he showed up for work, there was no evidence of anything being done.
All right, so we have the Department of Education. What about the State Board of Education? The State Board of Education consists of a variety of appointees that are responsible for a whole variety of education policies, including the master plan.
Yeah, basically, the State Board of Education is beyond the legislature passed laws. They are then the policy-making board to make sure those laws are then carried out, implemented, and then write the law, the regulations that go with that. In 16 years, and they are legally required every 5 years to update the master plan on public education in Pennsylvania. In 16 years, they did nothing. They didn't touch the document. So with all the new charter schools in Pennsylvania,
oh yeah, huge change taking place.
Huge
right?
change. I mean, with no. Here's another one. Okay, forgetting even the charter school issue, which they never even updated any regulations on charter schools. I'm going to give you another. No Child Left Behind. President Bush and Senator Ted, former Senator, God love him, he passed away. Senator Ted Kennedy worked to create No Child Left Behind. Now we all know there's people that like it and don't like it.
But that's not the point.
The point is, the Pennsylvania State Board of Education never updated the state's master plan for education to reflect that No Child Left Behind was passed into law.
Gee. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to ask the Auditor General about the budget impact, the fact that 500 school districts, are living on pins and needles. That might be one way to look at it. We'll see what the impact of the state budget or lack thereof has on Pennsylvania schools.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Business Council and by the Pennsylvania Business Council Education Foundation.
Welcome back to the program. The state's Auditor General, Eugene DePasquale, is my guest today. We're into education, state board, the Department of Ed, whether or not they fulfilled their legal, their statutory, and maybe even their moral. Right. The Auditor General is shaking his head. All right, something that you now have gotten into, this budget impasse. As we tape this program, or something like 100 days with a late budget. We've had late budgets before, but schools, I mean, you hear stories coming out of various school districts that you begin to go, whoa, is this really happening? The possibility that Erie School shuts down, school to Erie in Erie, Pennsylvania. You hear school districts borrowing money, school districts contemplating cutting. Right. And so you found 17 school districts and 2 intermediate units that had to borrow $346 million?
With interest costs of $11 million, and that's just
oh my God!
And that's just to date. And basically, the check payments are typically scheduled to go out towards the end of the month from the state. So schools that were basically required to pass a budget based on getting state money. So as we get to every new month in this impasse, the cost is going to go up dramatically. Yeah. And where we see this really coming to a head would be around mid-November. That if there isn't a budget by mid-November, a lot of schools, now it's not every school district, but there's a lot of schools that will just basically be out there lost.
Yeah. Remember what we had for the past 4 years? I mean, something like 85–90% of the schools either raised property taxes. Now, maybe they were going to raise them a bit, cut staff, right? Laid off faculty, and cut programs. Right. Some intramural. I heard, this is what they would report, and that's not you and me. It's what they would say.
And dipped into their reserves too.
And dipped into their reserves, and now they're using. Many school districts are using their reserves. Correct. Is that what you found?
Yeah, the ones that still have them are using that to sort of get by until, again, most of them are hopeful that the state budget's going to pass and the money's going to start flowing. But they're now starting to look at the situation and realize it may not happen anytime soon.
Yeah, and there's another problem under state law. You'll correct me. School districts, and there's a controversy over the way this works, but they're required currently under state law to provide charter schools with revenues.
Correct.
On a formula, I guess.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay, now. Some aren't doing it.
Right. The actual school district.
Go ahead, finish.
I've spoken to both the charter schools and the school districts about this, and both understand. The charter schools say they're required to give us the money. they'll understand that they realize they may not have it to give, but they're required to give it. And the same token, the school district saying, because of the state not passing a budget, they're in the absolute no-win situation. They know they're legally required to give the money, but they're like, well, if we don't have it, how do we give it?
Yeah. One of the other problems with the budget is, of course, there seems to be a consensus that Republicans in the legislature and Governor Wolf that $400 million in the school subsidy will be helpful. I mean, that's what the governor asked for, but there's still other fiscal resources that the governor wants, grant programs and others. And I don't know how that's going to get resolved, but paying for the interest on all this borrowing, that's going to ratchet up the cost to the state or the schools.
Let's be conservative about it. Say the budget isn't passed during the month of October.
And it doesn't look like it will.
And by the way, it doesn't look like it's going to. So if that doesn't happen, the cost of the interest alone will be about $25 million minimum. I'm being conservative here. $25 million just on the interest of the borrowing for school districts. So if the governor was asking for $400 million to go to that was necessary, you've now ratcheted up to a minimum of $425 million just because of the impasse.
Wow. All right, so let's talk about something else that weighs heavily. I mean, you get, and again, this is not an easy problem. Pushing some, and who knows what you hear different figures, between $50 and $60 billion in a pension debt. And it's a huge cost. It's going to be $3 to $4 billion out of the state budget in the next couple of years. And there doesn't look like there's at least a compromise. There's possibly a compromise on that. How important is it to resolve that regard? We don't have to get into how, but for the schools.
It is important. Here just recently, we've understood that the public school employee retirement system didn't meet its projected rate of return.
That's right.
It just recently happened. They projected about 7.5%, and they only got a little bit above 3%.
Right.
So whatever the problem was, the unfunded liability, before that day, that not meeting your number makes it actually a much higher number. Both sides need to work together on this because, it is a long-term financial challenge for the state. And it's an obligation that has to be met.
Yeah.
So, but both sides, and it does seem to me that, both sides are taking the issue seriously, but they need to quit having press releases on it and actually sit down and work it out.
Yeah, that's, we're about out of time, but I think that's certainly the problem. They're negotiating, but each side just you can't get it across the threshold.
Yeah.
I always remain a perpetual optimist. You've been around this a long time. You too. Stay optimistic. Right?
Yeah, you have to. Or why do you get? It's why you keep doing it because you believe. I believe that. I believe our audit is. As much as that is tough stuff. Hopefully, it will lead to change at the Department of Education. That's why we do it.
All right. Thank you for coming in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as always, stay well.